let's try building a application class here, a custom application class that intercepts a couple of events. So I'm going to start by adding a new global application class to our project. Now, for some reason, they don't support adding code behind for global application classes in the wizard, but you certainly can do it. And I'll show you an example of that in a bit. But for now, let's just stick with the default generated code. Now, you notice that they do put in a number of handlers here for us, application, start, end, error, and session start and end. I'm not actually going to use any of those, and we'll come back and talk about them in a minute. But let's go ahead and start by writing a function that we want to handle. I'm going to tap into the begin request and end request methods of the application class. So I'm going to create a public void application begin request, which takes the standard event arg signature of object source and event or event handler signature, event args e, and we just drop it right there. And I'm going to replicate that function for to do the equivalent for end request. So there's begin request and here's end request. Now, what I'm relying on here to get these wired up to the proper event is auto event wire up, which is on by default. And that will take care of taking this name. As long as you name the function exactly that, application underscore begin request, it will be subscribed to the begin request event of the application. So let's do something here like a timing thing. Let's keep track of how long it takes for each page request to complete its processing. And then we'll just print it out at the bottom of every page, just as an example. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to capture the current time, which is just a date time dot now dot to, well, let's just capture that. And what I want to do is save this. Now you want to be a little bit careful about where you're putting your state if you are going to do some state manipulation inside the application class. Because if you recall, this is going to be accessed, well, your application is going to be accessed by many different threads concurrently. It turns out they will actually create a distinct instance of your application class for each request. But in general, instead of putting in member variables for this class, I recommend using one of the state bags that are out there. And the one that often becomes useful when you're building application logic is the items collection in the context. So what I would do to store information between application begin request and application end request is just reach into the context.items collection and give it a start time, let's say, and set that equal to the datetime.now. So we're going to cache the current time right there. And then down here, we should be able to pull it out again. So datetime t equals context.items indexed by start time, just like we did earlier. As a date time, we need to coerce it back into a date time type. And actually, I need to cast it. It's not a reference type. So we'll just do this. Okay, and then once we have a time, let's calculate how long it took by creating a time span and setting that equal to datetime.now minus the start time. So we'll figure out how long it took. And then let's just write something out to the response, let's say. So response.write this page took, and let's print out delta.to, or let's print out total milliseconds. That'll give us a nice number to look at. MS to process. Okay, so there's my call. And now what should happen is every single time a request comes into this application, these two events are going to be tapped into by my global ASAX file, and it will capture the request time when it first comes in begin request, and then by the time we get to end request, it will retrieve the start time and then calculate the delta, the time that it took in between. Notice that the items collection is unique per request, and I'm relying on that fact because I couldn't use, for example, the application state bag because that is global to the application, and I would have several different requests processing at the same time. They'd step on each other. So this one is useful because it's always relative to the current request, and it will never be stepping on state in someone else's page. Okay, so let's go ahead and add another page just for a little bit of variety here. Let's add a web form, and let's just call it page 2 instead of default 2. And all I'm going to do in here is put a little sleep in so that we can slow down the request so we can see it actually take some time. So thread.current thread.sleep. I'm sorry, thread.sleep is all we need. And let's say 2 seconds. Okay, so let's go ahead and try running our default page and see if that application logic kicks in. And it does. So that page took 259 milliseconds to process. Let's try going to page 2, which should take considerably longer since I put the thread to sleep for 2 seconds. And there we go. It took 2022.4512 milliseconds. So as you can see, it's pretty straightforward to add logic to your application that affects all pages in your site. And you can do that just by adding a global ASAX file and associating it, putting it at the root of your application, and adding whatever logic you want to include across the entire application.